Hi and welcome to AXSchat. We're delighted that we're joined today by Nicole Windmann from SAP. This is exciting for me because having worked in accessibility for a long time, SAP's products are things that I've come across and worked with for a long time. And like many IT companies, we're all on a journey. And I've noticed over the last few years, having worked with Nicole particularly, that SAP are absolutely committed to that journey and have been taking some really big steps towards making their products more accessible. So wanted to highlight that because it's not something that people are necessarily aware of. So Nicole, welcome to AXSchat. We're delighted to have you with us. Tell us a little bit about your journey, how you came to be working in accessibility, and then more about what you're doing.
Okay, thank you, Neil, and everybody. Thanks for the invitation. I joined the topic accessibility in 2012. So my background is more economics. So I did some projects for the European Union in the past to develop economics, not accessibility, things like that. I worked during my maternity leave at SAP, and I was really delighted from the company. I loved its spirit. So I tried to join after my maternity leave again. And so in 2012, there was this possibility to join the accessibility team at SAP. And I was happy to join. It's really an interesting topic because, I'm not a developer from my background, but I think that's good because I understand the users, because I'm not in all this technology stuff. I'm really about how to use software. That's my background. I need to do my work with software in the past, and that's my background. I do a lot of training for developers, for designers at SAP, and also work a lot with customers to learn what are their needs, and also with the users. So what do they need? Because there's this it's not always the same what a customer needs and a user needs. So I try to bring all the stakeholders for accessibility together: the customers, the users, and the designers and developers, just to come up with the perfect product for them.
And that's a tricky job. Because what you're doing is an exercise in complexity. No two users are the same, let alone two companies, and of course you've got an enormous suite of different software products within SAP. So you work within a dedicated accessibility team, right? But there's also devolved accessibility work within SAP.
Yeah, it's really challenging. I really used that word that nobody loves, but it's challenging. We have at SAP a decentralized development structure, which means that due to the maturity of a product or due to the business case of a product, we have a different level of accessibility. So we are the central accessibility competence center at SAP that really trains and educates all the developers and designers, and also are the owners of the guidelines how to design and develop accessible software that is competitive on our markets. But every product can really decide on their own how to implement it and the roadmap of implementation. And what's also always important to know is that if we acquire a company, they also have not our guidelines and user experience already in place. So that's always a journey to really get in touch with everybody and also to align or try to align the user experience. I think that's always the biggest challenge, to really get everybody on the same track.
So I know Deborah's got a question, so I'll let her ask some before I come back with some more, because I've got a few.
Yes, and Nicole, welcome to AXSchat. We were very excited about having you on the program. I had the pleasure, we were talking about it before we went on air, to visit your headquarters and meet the accessibility team many years ago. Well, it was we were figuring it out. It was like 2009, and I was very impressed because I had a company called Tech Access, and we would work with large multinational corporations to help them become accessible. And I would, we would say things, and most of my team were people with disabilities or technologists with disabilities, I should say. And we would say to corporations like SAP, oh, well, all you do is this, and we didn't really do it like that, but in a way. And so as I looked and became more familiar with what SAP was doing, and SAP actually wrote a book about accessibility and SAP, and it was a really robust book, and it's years old now, but I thought it was really transformational, the information that was in there. And I think that what a lot of people don't understand about SAP services, software services, is that they're customizable. So SAP can help make sure that accessibility is part of the framework, but a client or a customer can put it in and customize it and totally make it unaccessible. And I know here in the United States, we love SAP software, and there has been, I remember years ago, there was litigation around this because SAP, it was the same type thing. As soon as the customer started customizing it, they would knock it out of accessibility compliance. And so it's been very interesting to watch SAP respond to it. And I think something you just said, we want to make sure that we're constantly teaching our developers, but we need to, I think something that SAP is doing that is very smart is you do allow your developers to decide, how are you going to implement it? Here is our accessibility framework. Here's what we're following, but go and be creative, go be transformational. And I think that is a real opportunity that other big corporate brands could learn from SAP. So I don't know if, I think the ongoing training, as you said, then you have the mergers and acquisitions where you're acquiring people that maybe they've done accessibility, maybe they've done it differently. And it just sounds like a really big job. So what else do you do in your area to help with all the many, many moving parts? There's so many moving parts.
Yeah, so there are many different branches we do it. I think a very important part is SAP also as an employer. Yeah, we try to get a really diverse and inclusive stuff. Yeah, so that we have really different people, and I think there SAP is doing a good job. When I started at SAP in my team, it was the first time I worked with somebody who has special needs. Yeah. So how should I design and develop software if I don't know anybody I'm developing for? Yeah. And so what I really like is that SAP is quite open for everybody. Yeah. You can start a job, and it's not that you have a certain group of people with special needs only in certain parts of a unit. You have them everywhere, and really different needs they have. Yeah. And this is a really important part, that everybody gets in touch with people who works differently with software, who have to plan their day differently, who have a different way to experience things. Yeah, I think this is an important part. The other one is sure the development cycle. So how do I define things that really every product needs to implement to be successful, and how can I define it in a way that it's really technology agnostic? For example, that's really not depending on which device it's running and in which technology it's running. And this is what I'm responsible for. So I define the development guidelines, and these development guidelines for accessibilities are part of the, it's called the development process. Yes, so you have to plan your roadmap, and not only at the end of the development, already in a design phase. So you have to plan, what do I want to do now? And what's really great is we have put the user into the center of everything we are doing currently at SAP with our user-centric approach, which is called SAP Fiori. It's our new user experience, where we really do a lot of user research already in a design thinking phase. We also have the design thinking process, where you say fail early and often. So try different things. So what do you want to do with your software, with your application? What's the purpose of it? And then play around. How should it look like? What is the really minimum you need to have in the application? That's also what we do. We simplify our transactions. I think this is also useful for accessibility, to really have not such a full screen, not too many functionalities per screen, and make it easier to understand the purpose of the screen. And this is what SAP Fiori is currently doing. At the end of the development, the product can request an accessibility test. This is, at the moment, I think the most difficult part for an inclusive society, I guess, because it's still a lot of manual testing. It's a lot of effort. Yeah, it's still hard to test it objective, and it's to really do it in an objective way. It's all about more physical impairments. So we call it cognitive disabilities, are really hard to measure. They are so individual, and this is a big part which is currently not in that accessibility scope of SAP, because if our customer asks us for accessibility, we need to answer it in a really objective way. So that everybody can understand it, what we are saying, and if they test it themselves, they need to come up with the same results. So that's why we need a really transparent testing process, and this is also why we currently face more towards visual impairments and hearing impairments and physical impairments, limited mobilities, and so on, and not so much about the cognitive disabilities, because this is really, so we are trying to bring that in the design approach and also in the recommendations for the development guidelines, because it's a lot is usability and not so much this technical accessibility requirements. But it's really hard for us. Many things are new. It's really hard to get study research to do it in an objective way. Yeah. Sure.
Nicole, we have been talking about the way more focus on products and the way how you develop them. But talk us, what can you tell us about the way how SAP works internally with employees with disabilities in order to spark innovation in relation to what you do, but also to let them be themselves at work?
Yeah. This is unfortunately not. We have diversity and inclusion are two different units at SAP. So that's why I can only talk about that as an employee, not as somebody who is leading that. But I know from the colleagues, because sometimes we work together from our office, that it's really, for SAP, what we learn is that the more diverse and colorful the teams are, the more creative you are, and the more you can be yourself, the more innovative and enjoyable is your work. And as far as I experience SAP and my colleagues and teammates, and you can really bring yourself completely in the company. So for example, you can use the assistive tool you are used to. So we have nothing at place where employees, for example, with a certain tool are forced to use another one. You can really come and order what you need, what you want. And this is not only for inclusion, also with regards to diversity. You can really be yourself and bring that in the teams, and that really leads to the way that the people are happy and satisfied and innovative. But how the employers really managing that is hard for me to tell, because I'm not part of the human resources department.
No, I understand. Talking about the external side and the internal side, how do you think both are able to help you at SAP to improve the relationship with customers, with other vendors? What is the role that have in building bridges with other organizations in the topic of accessibility?
Sorry,
is that a plus? Do you see that?
I think what's really important is the more colorful and diverse our teams are, the more it represents also the world, and also the situation with our customers. So that's also what I put what I started when I did my job, was really we had a change in our units where we say, okay, we decentralized completely. We saw how fast the IT business changed. So there was not so much time anymore for central governance. You needed to bring all the responsibility in the teams. They know their product best, and we have to trust them. but they also need some guidance. Yeah. So what do our customers need? How do our customers deal, for example, with the topic accessibility? And that's when I started my position, that was the time when everything changed also in SAP with regards to responsibilities in the development units. And so we said, okay, we need to get in touch with our customers. We need to get in touch with our users, which is quite more difficult to get in touch with users than with customers. And yeah, and this is important. And the more representative our stuff is with regards to the world and different user groups and also the situation with our customers, that more it reflects really the global situations. So that's what I like in all this diverse and inclusive culture, is that you really learn to know people really close in the company, where perhaps are sometimes not part of your known society or private relationships. Yeah.
So I think that's true, and absolutely the more diverse the teams that you're working with, the more likely your products are to meet the needs of the wider world and diverse customer base that you've got out there. I just want to backtrack to something that you said earlier, and that was around the fact that you adhere to you're looking to adhere to standards, and you want stuff that's testable and everything else, and the challenge that you have when it comes to cognitive accessibility. Now that's my hobby horse. That's an area of passion for me.
Yeah.
I think it is a tricky one, because obviously what you want is something that's replicable and testable and everything else. So there is a change to the web content accessibility guidelines coming out. There's 2.1 coming. There are some bits in there that address a few more issues for people with cognitive accessibility needs. There is also, I want to highlight this so that people know, a new working draft of the cognitive accessibility gap analysis of where there are things that need to be done and where the needs are for users. So if people want to understand cognitive more, go and have a look at the W3C's COGA gap analysis document, because there's a lot of stuff in there. And we hope at some point, with the work that W3C is doing and the work that Funke and the European Union are doing, that we will end up with more stuff that is testable, so that we can start to include these groups more thoroughly in the sort of more formalized process. I know that some of the stuff is captured through user-centered design and stuff that's happening in Fiori, and your newer user interfaces are way better. I can't quite describe how much better than the old ones, because the old ones were inordinately complex, because now you have people that are designing for users rather than basically creating a user interface that fits the database schema. Because essentially SAP is an enormously powerful database or ERP system, and the interfaces tended to be sort of powered by what the back end wanted rather than the other way around. And I think that's been a really seismic shift in what's happened within your organization, that it's become much more customer and user centered, and that's a positive thing, because that's also going to reflect on user needs of people with cognitive accessibility needs, regardless of whether or not you're going to have guidelines. One last point before I know Deborah's got a comment. I was interested to hear that anyone can have any piece of assistive technology. Now that's something that even me as a sort of liberal assistive technology protagonist within my organization actually find surprising, because we actually try and rationalize, because what we're trying to do is make sure that we have something that is, and you'll recognize this, testable, replicable, scalable. So I was interested to hear that you can just sort of effectively bring your own AT along, because that must make it harder for your guys delivering your internal systems to make sure that everything works. How do they cope with that?
That's As far as I know, we have assistance hotlines and so on when it doesn't work so well. Yeah. But as I said, I'm not so deeply involved. So the colleagues I know personally are working with the screen reader, everybody knows, and screen magnifiers, a lot of people knows, and that also fits quite often in our standard software. And if not, then yeah, we open tickets like our customers do. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But as you know it best, yeah, you have a quite heterogeneous system landscape. So it's not only SAP products, you have Office products, you have communication products, yeah, things like that. And this is always challenging. So I can imagine, I don't know it by 100%, as I'm not in this team, and in Germany everything is data protected and personal rights, so nobody's talking about that. I can imagine that there's always personal help needed, due to the fact that we have such a heterogeneous landscape everywhere in offices. Yeah. So
yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah.
Deborah.
Yes, and there's so much good work being done at SAP. I know that SAP was one of the first major multinational brands to really come out and say, we are hiring people with autism.
Yes.
We want a diverse population, employee population. And I served on the W3C Cogna working group early on, haven't for about a year now. But what we used to do at Tech Access when we were trying to get our hands around this, we would do the same thing that SAP and many others are doing. We would look at it from the usability eyes, because I often thought of like my daughter who has a cognitive or intellectual disability, Down syndrome. And I thought, how is SAP supposed to make sure that all of your software works for my daughter who reads at a second grade level? And the reality is my daughter really ever going to use SAP software, blah, blah, blah. So I having, been personally impacted, I understood the difficulty of it. And it was very interesting working with the W3C Cogna group as we tried to figure this out. How would somebody with Down syndrome use this? How would somebody at the very beginning stage? That's what we were trying to think, And of course, once again, I haven't been involved in probably a good year, and Neil has continued his brilliant work. But I think I applaud SAP for multiple reasons. I applaud SAP because you are committed to a diverse workforce, and you understand that a diverse workforce provides innovation. And that it supports your customers and your users. And I also like, as Neil just commented on this as well, that if I need assistive technology, it really should be, it should be less formal and easier to get the support, the accommodations I need, because I often say accommodating an employee or an individual, it's not always about disabilities. It's not always about it. And many disabilities are hidden and invisible, and people don't necessarily want to disclose it. I know last year at the International Labor Organization speech in the conference in the US, one of the speakers came out. I remember Neil using those terms as he was coming out about having dyslexia and using assistive technology. But she told us that she had muscular, MS. And she said for a long time she didn't want to talk about it because she was afraid people would pity her and maybe even discriminate against her. And this was a leader working in Canada. So I think a lot of things have happened, but what we've seen is the companies that are really providing transformation, which I believe SAP is one of those, is the ones that understand it is about the user experience, it is about the customers, and it's about engaging with them all. And I know SAP has always been very good about your user groups, your customer groups. I know people with disabilities are very engaged in telling you what they think about your accessibility of your different products. They're very not shy about telling you exactly what they think. Yeah. And sometimes, as you said, Nicole, sometimes it's not about SAP. It might be that they're having problems with some other application or their hardware so it's always interesting peeling back the onion and figuring out where it is. But I do believe that the way you're doing it, the way SAP is doing it, it leads to transformation and innovation, and it's going to allow y'all to continue to really revolutionize what we're doing here. Because if SAP can be accessible, everybody can be accessible, just because the complicatedness and the multidimensional, there's just so much to SAP software, which is why it's the best in the world. But Neil, I know you wanted to, oh, I saw somebody, it was, Neil, did you want to make a comment? Or
no, I'll let Antonio.
Yeah.
I'll let Antonio.
Yeah. And even before we do Antonio, Nicole, I don't know if you wanted to, comment on what we had just said to you. So let's give you the floor first and then give it to Antonio.
No, it's yeah. Thanks a lot for the compliments. First of all, it's good.
I'm a fan.
Thank you. Yeah, it's as I said before. I think it's not all about compliance, and I think this is really the biggest problem we have is this compliance stuff, because you can develop accessibility WCAG compliant software which is not usable. Yeah. Yes. So it's really the usability should be the base, and this is what we are working on with SAP Fiori, is really to build a good base of usability, to build on that a good accessibility. This is really important, and I think with artificial intelligence in the future, we can improve. I think this will. I think the AI part bring a lot of automatism in the software. This will be a big support for accessibility, also with regards, for example, cognitive disabilities, to bring a lot of business processes really in the back. Everything is running in the background, and the user will only really work on what he really needs to work on. This is the future. I think this is really visionary. We are far away from that currently, I think, worldwide. But I guess the artificial intelligence part also for business software will be a big promise to improve accessibility. Yeah.
No, I was going to ask you about in terms of this new technology. What you more? You already mentioned a little bit about AI, and we also have other technologies that are coming, like virtual reality or augmented reality, and as you know, and robotics associated with artificial intelligence. And at the same time, we saw a few days Google launched an assistant that lets someone call a system in your behalf, through voice. So this could be very interesting for people that can actually ask a device to do something for them. So my question is, what of these technologies you see that will impact more, or also which of these technologies excite you more in relation to the work that you are doing?
So it's hard for me to speak about the work that I'm doing, because I'm not allowed to in that part of. But for me personally, if I think about me as a user, as a person, I think the most promising part would really be a kind of personal assistant I have, which is scanning all my applications in my roles. Yeah, I have, and always tells me, okay, you're running behind that, you need to do that next. I think this is when you think about your working day. Yeah, so like the highest managers have, they have their assistants, and they only tell them what they need to do next. I think if you could bring that into life also on your daily business, and all the things you have to do, I think this is something I can imagine can happen in a realistic way. Yeah,
it's coming, and I can't wait for it.
I think so. Yeah,
I'm lucky enough to have some help with I share an assistant, but I have assistants, so that's fab. But even so, I mean, it's never enough. They can't scan the sheer volume of emails that I have, whereas a computer can. I get hundreds of emails a day, thousands of tweets, 4 or 5 different messaging clients. How do you prioritize? So algorithms can help with that. So I think that potentially, it's got massively wide application for everyone, but it's going to have a really big impact for people with cognitive needs. So I'm very excited about those kind of prospects. We're at the end of our half hour. It's been brilliant. I wish we could have spoken for longer. Need to thank our supporters, Barclays, who help us keep the lights on and keep everything moving, and join us every single week without fail. It's great to have large organizations supporting accessibility like that, and we like to shine the light on organizations when they are doing good work. So thank you very much for taking up the challenge, Nicole. It's been brilliant to feature you and SAP on AXSchat.
Thank you, Neil.
We look forward to seeing you on Twitter.
Thanks a lot for the possibility to talk today. It's nice to meet you all. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to Tuesday to our Twitter.
Yes, and make sure you follow her. So she's a new Twitter user. So AXSchat, follow her. She's at, I'm going to look at her. It's NicoleWindmann. So Nicole Windmann. Let's give her lots of follows. Thanks, Barclays.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole.